Hey, welcome to United Opposition with Scott and Marshall. Hope you're ready for a good show today. We are going to talk about gender identity. Here we go. So with that little bumper video there, I don't know if you guys noticed, but we're really leaning into that whole Gen X thing with kind of the 80s look and the 80s music.
The more you know.
Right? The more you know, because we are, right? We're Gen X, right smack in the middle of Gen X. Everybody that we went to school with is turning 50 this year.
Yeah, and the more you know, well, knowing is half the battle. So
there you go, G.I. Joe. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to United Opposition. If you're watching, if you don't know what this is two people on opposite sides of most subjects that we're going to be talking about, coming together and talking about those subjects and trying to show how you can be united while still being in opposition. Therefore, United Opposition. And there we are. So how's your day going, Marshall?
Oh, it's going fantastic. How's yours doing, Scott?
Doing good. I'm going to do my little coffee swig here for Covenant Coffee. Just really want to thank Covenant Coffee for the sponsorship for 511 Media and everything that they do for the community and for the youth that are aging out of foster care, giving them a place to serve, a place to be, a job, and an easier path to kind of get into real life. And so, just going to take my little ASMR swig of Covenant Coffee.
So at the end of the day, if people buy this coffee, where can they get it?
There's actually here. They have a storefront actually here in town. But you know what? I believe I have to check the website. But Covenant Coffee does have a website. Back, you guys, I'll ask them coming in. Well, where do people get Covenant Coffee?
CovenantCoffee.org.
CovenantCoffee.org. Come on, pass through, guys. Pass through.
Hey guys,
we got our in-studio audience going on right here as we come in. We got started actually on time, so we had to.
Good job.
Yeah. But hey, it's live. This is our live show. This is how it happens. But yeah, CovenantCoffee.org. If you wanna pick up some of your own coffee and support what they do.
All right.
Hope Cup. That is really cool. So yeah, today we're talking about gender identity. Might be very, very interesting. And I'm just going to kind of give my little 30-second spiel of where I stand in this position. And Marshall, share with us yours. Basically, gender identity as an adult, you can pretend to be whatever you want to be, whatever you want to do. What's the phrase? Let your freak flag fly. That's, okay, I get it. But two things. I don't believe that you have the right to force me to participate with you. And I don't think you have a right to affect the lives of children. And so any type of medical procedure, whether physical or chemical, that's done on a child for the sake of identity politics, I think should be classified as child abuse. Marshall?
Well, I think that we have to make a distinction right away between sex and gender. Most people are born male or female. And then gender is really a social construct. And as all things, these things, all the human traits are on a spectrum. So we have people who identify firmly as male, firmly as female, but then there's that in-between ground where it gets really gray. And we have people who identify all over the place. And they're coming into a world where, on the one hand, we're encouraging people to explore this. On the other hand, we're coming out of a period where this was kept hush-hush and repressed. There's a lot of social conflict and upheaval over this particular topic. It's a very emotional topic.
Where do you stand on it?
I think that people need to be true to themselves. I would say that I think that we need to work very carefully when it comes to children, and we need to ensure that children have expert professional care. And I would personally lean against any kind of medical intervention until that child is of the age of reason, maybe even to the age of 25. But that's not a decision for me to make. I think that's just kind of common sense or a good idea. But there could be extraneous circumstances where some sort of medical intervention needs to take place in order to do what's best for that individual. And that's really a decision that has to be made between a doctor and probably a psychologist and the individual themselves in question. Do I think there's a political side to it? Is it Yeah, I think there's some of the stuff that it's like it's nail biting to me. It's a little troublesome to me. But on
Yeah.
the other hand, part of that could just be I'm a little ignorant about all of it. And it could be that I don't know. And I think these are deeply personal decisions. And I don't think that as an individual, I have a right to weigh in on any individual's personal decision. But I would say that in general, I I have a hard time with the idea of, well, we're going to take this child that is very young and we're going to do a medical surgical procedure and then raise them with this particular gender identity. I don't know enough about that to say that that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I'm leery of that, but that's just
So it would appear that on that particular part of this document talk of this discussion, that you and I are actually kind of the same on that. Of there shouldn't be, children shouldn't be having medical procedures done on them for the sake of identity politics.
well, yeah, never for the sake of politics. Now, if a procedure is in the best interest of that individual and it is going to promote their health and their happiness, their wellness, that's between them, the psychologist, the doctor, or whatever, because gender is largely up here in the brain. You can have a biological sex, you're born with or without, but up here, this is a spectrum. Everybody's different. That's just the product of natural evolution. And
As I'm looking down, sorry, just interrupting real quick. As I'm looking down, I'm writing so that it's funny. I'm interrupting you to say this so that I don't interrupt your argument. I'm trying to what I want to counter with. So if you see me looking down, I'm not ignoring you. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, no. So I think it's a complicated medical and psychological issue. I think it needs to be managed professionally, but I also think it needs to be managed with tremendous caution, because a person, until they reach the age of like 25, their brain isn't even fully wired. They are still growing. They are still developing.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the things I wanted to ask you when you were saying that, because you're talking about for the best interest of the child and for the best interest of for their happiness and stuff like that. But when does a child even know what makes them happy? I mean, truly, when do they actually? What do they actually know? Like you were saying, until somebody's like 25, do they really have an understanding of who they are? How is it that a child has any understanding of what's going to make them happy? Of course, eating ice cream all day, they think is going to make them happy. But aren't we as adults supposed to step in and say that is simply not the right thing to do at this age?
Right. And I'm not saying that we need to let the kids, run the asylum here. But we do have to consider their wellness and their happiness, their well-being. I think that's absolutely critical here. They are the focus of this particular
but who defines
topic,
that?
if you will.
Who defines what their wellness is?
You have to make these determinations with a psychologist and a doctor being involved, being in the lead, advocating for what's in the best interest of the child as well as the parents.
How do you rid the bias out of a doctor and a psychologist?
Well, there's the problem, right? If you have a doctor or a psychologist who is just hell bent for leather, if you will, then and that's the problem. And so I don't know how we care for that or manage that as a society. But I would say, go ahead.
Sorry,
go ahead, Scott.
I would say because I think the counter argument to that for me would be how do you adjust for the bias of the psychologist, the doctor? And I think the counter to that would be, well, how do you adjust for the bias of the parent? If the parent is there saying, no, I don't want this done to this child, but at the same time, I think that child is under the responsibility of the parent, and I think the bias of the parent should carry more weight than the bias of a doctor or a psychologist. What do you think?
Well, all of these people have a solemn responsibility to look after the welfare and well-being of the child and act in their best interest. That rests no more heavily than with the parents.
Okay, because I want to find out from you whose opinion carries, in your opinion, whose judgment carries more weight in the life of a child, the parent or society?
Oh, the parent does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
That's what it means to be a parent, right? But I would want the parent
People
to
who are
have
on
all
the
the.
opposite side, do you think the people who are pushing for this gender identity thing would agree? Or do they think society, because right now the laws make it look like they think that society should be in charge. Because right now, even for so many different things, for abortion, for sexual orientation, and even now in identity with children, the system is setting itself up to say, keep it from the parents. Don't tell the parents. It's already saying society has more of a right over what happens to your child than you do as a parent. I find that detestable, and I don't know what side of that you're on when it comes to, in general, who has the say when it comes to a child, whose opinion of what that child should be carries more weight, the parent or society?
Well, I think in a way you kind of have to have a series of checks and balances here because in general, I would say most parents, but there are exceptions. There are parents who abuse their children. There are parents who don't care or love their children properly or respect their children. And these fall on both sides of that spectrum, by the way. There are doctors out there who are not as ethical as others. And there are psychologists out there who might be biased one way or the other. You have all of these different things going on. But at the end of the day, I do think that the decision needs to be between that tight-knit group of people. I would advocate for, hey, we need to delay doing anything drastic until this person is an adult and they're of age and they can say, you know what, I really feel that this is who I am inside. And in order to be happy and healthy and live a happy, fulfilled life, I want to go through with this. That I'm not going to stand in the way of that. That's not for me, but I'm not going to stand in the way of that. But when it's a child, I think we have to take steps to protect the child. Now,
yes, we as a society
should society do it or the parents do it though?
Well, no, but what I'm saying is, shouldn't we as a society set an age limit that says below this age, we don't touch children? Like below this age, we don't touch children.
Well,
and then they reach a certain age, whether or not I agree with their decision of what to do at a certain age, I accept the idea that it's no longer it's not my business, even as society, to say whatever you want to do as an adult, as whatever you want to do that. But I think we should be making laws that protect children. I think we should be making laws that say you cannot perform surgery.
Isn't that society stepping on the parents though?
No, it's I mean, I suppose you could say that, but what we're doing is trying to say you cannot take an action. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. That's the thing is taking I guess saying a positive action instead of not positive, but I'm trying to think of the word I'm trying to say, but the difference between saying you cannot do this yet to say,
right. We have these rules in our society, like with drinking and drugs and driving cars and joining the military and all of this other stuff. I get that.
Yeah.
And I'm inclined to agree in general, but I do think that we need to allow for exceptions. And if there are doctors, psychologists, and parents and the child themselves, and they're all in agreement that this is critical, this is important to do this.
But what defines critical?
Well, again, that's a medical and a psychological evaluation.
But in law, it would have to be codified. So what would we codify that? How would you codify that exception? I mean,
because here's where I'm up against my ignorance now, right? I don't know enough about how medical decisions are made at a certain level. For example, there are some places in the world where euthanasia is legal. But in order to partake of euthanasia, to receive it, you actually have to go through a whole process. Yeah. And there are even people who are physically normal and healthy.
But you're still talking about adults.
Right. They're adults, but even with the adults, they still have to go through these hoops. They have to go through a process. So there's a process to evaluate the individual and determine whether or not this is in that individual's best interest and within their rights. But and a similar process needs to be applied here to protect the child from being pushed into something that would ultimately be irrevocably harmful to them. But at the same time, we don't want to withhold something that a child needs in order to, be healthy and happy and whole, if you will.
But isn't it good policy to set, hey, here is this hard line that until the child is an adult and can think for themselves and can take responsibility for themselves? Because everything that you said, when it comes down to it, even the doctor, the psychologist, the parents, the child who's a minor, they all agree. But then at 25, this child who everybody agreed at 14 can have this surgery. Then 10 years later, this child says, why did you guys let me do that?
Right. And that's something that I would worry about.
Exactly. So they did not have at that time the legal resources to say, this is what I actually mean. This when they're 8, they could be 18 and choose to do that. Then at 25, be like, I wish I hadn't done that. But you know what? It's legally on them. That was their mistake and they chose that. But as a child, I would think that the parents, the doctors, and the psychologists would be legally responsible now for if this person, this adult who had this done as a child, later says, I regret doing this. How did you let me do that? It would be their fault. It would be their problem. They let a child do this. That's why I'm like, it should just be a solid, like, we don't let children make these decisions. We don't let adults make these decisions for children. Let them make it as an adult. Leave children out of this.
Remember what I said in the last show about wisdom, right? Wisdom is, knowing when you have to follow the rules, but there are times when you have to make exceptions. And I don't want to close the door irrevocably to people availing themselves of some procedure that is actually in their best interest and would actually benefit them. On the other hand, I don't want people to just say, you know what, this is kind of seems like the cool in thing to do. Let's go ahead and go with it and see what happens. Let's start injecting these chemicals into my body to change my biological sex so that my biological sex agrees with my gender or whatever. What we really have to do is we have to, I think, encourage people to embrace their gender, whatever that may be, regardless of their biological sex. And this is something that you also
acknowledge the whole idea of gender. Why is that separate from sex?
Because it's in your head. It's how you're wired. It's your neurology. And that's on a spectrum. No two people are exactly alike. And so that's going to vary. So you're going to have people who biologically they're male or female, but they have same-sex attraction, if you will. Now, from a Christian perspective, there are ways to handle this, right? Because if you are born and you are hardwired in your brain to have same-sex attraction, which I know some Christians don't believe in this, but biologically, I think it's largely been established. How do you handle that if same-sex unions, or any union outside of marriage for that matter?
You handle it the same way that a heterosexual person abstains from having sex with everybody they want and waits and has sex with just the person that they marry. You just, because there are some people who are born with a much stronger sexual attraction, much stronger sexual drive. There are people who are born with, they're kleptomaniacs that just have, we struggle with that. We are sinful creatures who struggle with that, and we struggle with different things in different ways. So you learn to make that sacrifice to God. You learn to live with that struggle and call on God's power to help you through it, whatever the struggle is. If the struggle happens to be, you're just a compulsive liar, you have to work against it. If the sin that's in your heart is one of greed and you are constantly just trying to take advantage of everybody, you might even be born with chemical imbalance that makes you a sociopath or a psychopath. And you got to work with those things. We don't automatically say, well, that's the way you were born, therefore it's okay to be that way. We all struggle with something.
Right.
Why do we make the exception for that?
Right. And so what I'm suggesting here is given that we should encourage people to embrace their gender, to explore their gender, to determine who and what they are regardless of their biological sex. We need to not shame people if there is a disconnect or an incongruence, I should say, between their biological sex and their gender.
But we should help them to get better. We should help them to understand reality instead of embrace their delusion.
It's not necessarily a delusion, Scott.
Same argument for kleptomaniac, same argument for a compulsive liar. If that's the way you are, do we just embrace that, or do we try to help them get better?
No, because a kleptomaniac or compulsive liar harms other people by their actions, whereas a person who has same-sex attraction harms nobody by having that attraction. What we would do is we would encourage abstinence and proper behavior until adulthood, and then as adults, then they can, make the choice that's right for them. But as children, I think we need to not shame children because they have a different gender, because their gender identity disagrees with their biological sex.
Now, I want to maybe talk about the difference between shame and encouraging reality. Can you not encourage reality without shaming?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can. Yeah, you can have a frank and honest and open discussion with this is what's going on. And I think a psychologist can do that very well. A therapist or whoever can say, look, this is what's going on. And okay, and the idea behind all of this, though, is we eliminate the demand or the need for gender reassignment surgery for a sex change operation until that person is old enough to say, as an adult, this is what I want for me. This is, my doctor, my therapist agree. And now let's go ahead and do this and just, make me whole, if you will, or make me right.
Do you think it's dangerous then? Do you think it's dangerous right now? Since you and I kind of both agree on that, like leave the children alone. Yeah. I feel it's dangerous right now to be even talking with children about this is okay. One day, this is to be affirming at this age, to be saying, because now it's given the idea of, well, it should be okay that I do this. Telling children it should be okay, that this is normal behavior. Us saying that to children is what's creating this world where they think that that's what they want to be. That's what they want to do, because the world is saying, we're cheering you on. The world is cheering. You're so brave for being a furry. You're so brave for wanting to, you're so, yeah, that's what we want. We want to affirm that. I mean, that even that language of gender, affirming someone's gender. Are we not simply just lying to children until it's their time to when they can make their own decision? That we're already programming them and grooming them by positively talking about these things as an option. We're bringing that into their world. We're bringing that positivity of this potentially damaging, psychosis in their mind by encouraging, by calling it affirmation, by saying we need to accept it. We need to say this is all okay. It's okay that your friend next to you is a furry and acting this way. It's okay that this person is coming into your bathroom. It's okay that this other person, this man, is coming into your girl's restroom. By saying all these things to children, are we not creating a lie to them by encouraging them to want these things right now at an age when they don't even know what they mean?
Right. So that kind of education needs to be age appropriate. It needs to be informed and backed by science. It needs to be provided by experts, teachers, educators who know how to deal with this. And it should include the parents.
Hold on. Why is a teacher qualified to do that?
And it should include the parents, because teachers know how to teach. Teaching is an art. And that would be like saying, well, let's, I don't want a carpenter, just somebody with a bucket and nails can do this.
So the requirement the requirement now for public teachers is to be experts in gender identity. That's what you're saying.
I didn't say that. No, teachers know how to teach, and they are qualified to teach their subjects.
Right. But
if this includes people who teach about things like gender identity.
Right. But if it's in school, then you're requiring every teacher to have to do this. If it's going to be school, you're requiring.
Who says I'm requiring every teacher to do this?
You just said it had to be part of education. So now you're
in education. You have teachers who teach different subjects, and you have people who come in. Remember in junior high, we had sex ed in 7th or 8th grade, didn't we, Scott? I don't know where you went to junior high. I went to Sierra. Where did you go? I
went to Fairfax, but we did the sex ed in high school.
Yeah. And so when I was in junior high, we had an expert come in. It was this woman who came in and just kind of said, your bodies are going to start changing. Here's what you can expect, and so on.
What's different right now is we're talking about gender identity in the classroom, to where the teachers have to respect and entertain and participate in this dysphoria. Every teacher has to do that. If this child says, I want to be a boy or a girl, I want my identity is this, we're now requiring every teacher to have to be an expert in this. That is now a new requirement for all teachers, because it's not just a subject that's being taught. You're trying to say in schools, this is something that has to be recognized and identified and participated in by all parties. And now you are requiring every teacher to have to be an expert in this and participate in something that a lot of them won't even believe in.
Yeah, remember, the health and well-being of the children is paramount. So if that means the teachers have to go to a workshop or take a class or do an in-service, or we need to have someone come in, whatever, any of these things that have to, because teachers are doing this anyway. They're doing this anyway all the time.
As the parent, the health of my child, for me, the health of my child is to not have to deal with this at school. That's the better health of my child.
Okay, so what you do in that case,
with the furries next to them, not have to deal with the boys walking into my daughter's bathroom. That's the health of my child as a parent.
Okay, so what you do in that case is you contact the school administrator and you move your child to another classroom or to another school. If you're having problems with boys coming into the girls' restroom, you call the police, because that's a crime.
All the schools and all the schools and all the classrooms are all participating. The answer is what my wife and I did do, which was take our kid out of school and homeschool them.
And that's a valid option. That's a valid option. You can totally do that, Scott. At no point am I saying that we need to exclude the parents. The parents need to be involved.
How long is society going to let us do that? I mean, honestly, look at it right now. How long is society going to let homeschooled parents be able to do that?
I don't think society in any time in the future that I can foresee is going to replace parents. Nobody can love, care, and raise a child as well as parents can, who actually love and care for their children.
Agree on that,
but
stop society from doing it.
Well, society can try, but
They
it will
are.
fail. It will fail.
Yeah.
The village does not raise children so well. You know, we've learned this repeatedly.
I love that when people always say it takes a village to raise a child. I'm like, the only thing a village can raise is an idiot.
Well, there you go. So the problem that we get into is that not all parents are loving and caring and compassionate. Not all parents are interested in the best interest of their children. And that's where society has to step in to advocate for the defenseless, which is the child. But aside from those cases, I don't know if the rare is the right word, because I think it's a little bit common that there are parents who neglect their children. Although neglect, right? You and I mean, come on, we're kids from the 80s, right? You know?
The first generation of latchkey kids, right?
Yeah. So, but
clarify, that wasn't me. My mom was home. Every time I came home, my mom was home.
Yeah.
I think that's a whole different discussion, but I think that's a part of our society that we've lost.
Yeah. I think, parents need to be involved. The health and wellness of the children is absolutely paramount. Things like sex education need to be age appropriate. If the school is doing something that you're uncomfortable with, or if there are students at the school that make you uncomfortable for whatever reason, I think you should have the right to transfer your child to another classroom, to another school, or to homeschool. Absolutely. And I think society should facilitate that, because I think those are reasonable parenting options. I don't think that children should be subjected to a surgical procedure unless it's absolutely, positively, 100% without a doubt necessary for their well-being. Otherwise, I think that procedure should be deferred until the child is of age, and again, in consultation with a therapist or a psychologist and a doctor, or even a panel of such individuals. I'm not trying to throw up barriers, because I understand that these are going to become barriers to people accessing, what they might call politically gender affirming surgery or whatever. And I don't necessarily want to do that, but I also don't want people to make a choice that is irrevocable and could cause long-term harm. But we could say the same.
Perhaps barriers is a good thing to keep that from happening.
Well, but the thing is, do we put barriers in front of people who want to join the military, or do other things that are dangerous or potentially deadly or harmful?
There already are barriers.
There are, but are they of the same level?
Again, it's adults making those decisions.
Right. And are they of the same level?
Children doing construction So we're keeping it out of the range. I think right now, as we're closing up right now, it's been 30 minutes. I think here on this episode of United Opposition, I think we have found that we are potentially more united on this than we thought, than we are in opposition. That maybe I think there's something that society can learn from this discussion. I think you and I both agree. Leave the children alone. Leave the children alone.
Yeah. We want what's in the best interest of the children, and in general, yes, let's leave them alone. But there are going to be cases where education and intervention are essential to their well-being, and I don't want to prevent people from accessing that.
But let's make those walls as tough as possible to get through. That way, people don't just on a whim make these awful decisions.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone does this on a whim. But you're right. There may be some people who are going through it a little too smoothly or quickly.
See how fast it's increased. It's a trend. It's a trend, and it's popular, and that's what we got to watch out for. But it's been 30 minutes. This has been our show. This has been United Opposition. We'll see what we talk about next time. But thank you for joining us today, and let's learn how to be a society that's able to disagree yet still come together to find a solution. All right.
You got it.
Until next time. See you guys later.